Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. My name is Mark Harrison. I'm 36 years old and have been married for 16 years to my high school sweetheart, Sarah. We have a 14-year-old daughter named Emily. I stand about 6 feet tall and weigh around 200 pounds. Mostly muscle, thanks to 16 years as a commercial and residential electrician in Dayton, Ohio. School was never my strong suit. Sure, I graduated from high school, but my real talent was working with my hands. I had trouble sitting still in class, so I often got into trouble for disturbing others. I wanted to do something, not sit quietly and listen. Right after leaving school, I got a job as an apprentice electrician with a local contractor. 4 years later, I easily passed the journeyman's exam, and 2 years after that, at age 24, I received my master electrician license. I consider myself a smart guy, but I just don't like book learning. I wanted to start my own electrical business after getting my master's license, but Sarah wasn't comfortable with the risk. We had a young daughter, and Sarah was a stay-at-home mom who really enjoyed having a steady income to rely on. So I continued to work for Alpha Electrical Contractors. I made good money. We were able to buy a house, each of us had a car, everything was already paid for. We could afford vacations, pay all our bills without worry, and even had money left over for fun. We weren't rich, but we lived comfortably, happily, and in love. Well, I certainly was. My best friend growing up was Brad. We met in 3rd grade in Mrs. Collins's class when his family moved into a house down the street, and we were practically inseparable from then on. We played sports together, went on double dates, and even got jobs at the same fast food restaurant in high school. Brad was rather book smart. While I was pulling cables and bending conduit as an apprentice electrician, he was finishing his business degree at Ohio State. While I was working toward my master's license, he was getting his MBA. He had a great job in corporate finance, although he worked long hours and made a lot more money than I did. But he was lonely, so he spent a lot of time with Sarah and me. We tried to arrange dates for him, but nothing came of it. He came to dinner several times a week and often said how jealous he was of my family. "Money can buy many things," he'd say, "but it can't buy the love of family." I agreed with him every time. I loved my wife, and my daughter was everything to me. We were very close. I told her a lot about my work, even though I had much higher hopes and dreams for her. But as I reasoned, knowing something about repairing electrical systems never hurts. My world came crashing down in August. I came home from work and saw Brad's car in the driveway. This wasn't unusual because, as I said, he often came over for dinner and was sometimes home before me. Usually when I entered the house, Emily was the first to greet me. She heard my truck pull up and always made sure to meet me at the door. It didn't happen every day, but it happened often enough that when I walked in and she wasn't there, I asked Sarah where she was. "She's at a friend's house," Sarah replied. I noticed her face looked troubled. Brad sat behind her on the sofa, and his expression was the same. Something was definitely wrong. "What's going on?" I asked. Then Sarah said the 4 words every man dreads hearing from his wife. "We need to talk." Having just returned home from working outside in mid-August heat, I was pretty dirty. "Okay. Do you mind if I take a shower first?" Sarah nodded, so I headed to the bedroom and took a long shower. I considered my options. Could she be pregnant again? We hadn't talked about kids in a while, and we'd actually had a lot of conversations about what we might do once Emily leaves home. We hadn't been intimate for a few weeks. Something always got in the way, or she just didn't feel well when I tried to initiate things. But it had been no more than 6 to 8 weeks, so the timing could work out. If she accidentally got pregnant, it would definitely be a concern, although I hope she knew I would be happy to accept another child. Why was Brad here for this? Maybe she told him first to see how he thought I would react. Maybe someone was seriously ill. I had no family left. All my grandparents were gone. My father died when I was 11, and my mother died about 10 years later. They divorced when I was young due to my mother's infidelity and my father's inability to deal with it. When she finally left, Dad died in a car accident, crashing head-on into a tree. He was completely sober, and there were no skid marks on the road. I realized later what this meant. But perhaps Sarah's parents or her younger sister Liz had problems. I assumed it might have been Sarah or Brad who was ill, but I thought I would have known about it sooner. Obviously, these were just guesses, and there was nothing left to do but go down and find out what it was all about. I got dressed and joined them in the living room. Thinking back, I should have caught the hint that they were sitting next to each other on the sofa while I was sitting alone in the armchair, but it didn't occur to me at the time. "Mark, you are a wonderful man and have been a faithful husband and hard worker for so long," Sarah began. It wasn't the best start. "There's no easy way to say this, but Mark, Brad and I have fallen in love. I'm sorry, but I'm asking for a divorce." If I had ever imagined what it would be like to be hit in the chest with a brick, what I felt at that moment would be pretty close to that. I was stunned, and the words got stuck in my throat, so Sarah kept talking. "I hope we can do this peacefully. We would like to stay here so Emily can continue to attend the same school. I don't want to interfere with her life any more than is absolutely necessary, but we just can't continue the way we were." I found the strength to speak. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked with difficulty. She gave a crooked smile, and her answer was like a knife in my back. "Of course, Mark." I was still trying to recover from the blow to my soul I had just received. I always thought that we were happy together. Of course, we had problems like all couples, but nothing that could cause a breakup. My mind was spinning as I tried to remember what I could have done to drive her into the arms of another man. We had been together for over 16 years, married for 16 of them, more than half of our lives. There must have been something, but I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. Brad's attempt to get a word in edgewise finally brought my voice back. "Mark, listen." "No," I roared in a voice even I didn't recognize. "You no longer have the right to speak to me. Consider this a warning, Brad. If you say one word in my direction, I swear I will do something I'll regret. Don't test me right now. Nod if you understand." He nodded. Brad was in a suit and not particularly muscular. He could see the anger in my eyes, and he knew I meant every word. "You don't have to act like that," Sarah intervened. "Let's try to stay calm, please." "I am trying to behave as calmly as possible. I am the one who has been betrayed and trampled upon. So screw you and your opinions on how I should react." I shot back at her. "And I'll take custody of my daughter, not you." "Mark, I understand you're upset, but I won't give up custody of Emily," Sarah said. "We can agree on a fair visiting schedule so you can spend plenty of time with her, but she will stay with us to keep her life as normal as possible. You work long hours, and I will still be a stay-at-home mom. To hell with this. God, how eloquent I am. You don't understand anything, damn it. She is also my daughter. I didn't spend the last 16 years working like a horse to support my family, so I could become a part-time dad because the cheater I married decided to climb the social ladder to someone with a bigger bank account. I guess this explains why none of the women Brad dated ever worked out. He apparently had his sights set on you from the very beginning." "It's not about the money, Mark," she countered. "The thing is, we shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. I thought I loved you so much, but we were just children. I married you because we were together for so long and everyone expected it of us. I tried to be a loving wife to you, but as I grew older, I realized there was something more for me, and I found it with Brad. We didn't want it to turn out like this. He was just always there and we got along. Honestly, we were surprised you never noticed how well we get along." I realized they were now holding hands. "I noticed," I said. "I just trusted my wife and my best friend." Paradoxically, it never occurred to me that two of the three most important people to me would stab me in the back. "It's bad enough that you did this to me. If you fight me for custody, the gloves are off. Clear?" "Then I guess the gloves are coming off," Sarah said. "I'm sorry you think it has to be like this. Could be a lot easier." I'm sorry that I'm making your complete betrayal more difficult than you'd like. You two get out of here. I will not leave the house that I paid for every day because you decided that I was no longer good for you. I'm sure the gentleman with a lot of money will have a place for you to stay." "Okay," Sarah said. "I already have a few things at his house anyway. I'll just grab a few more things and then we'll leave." "Mark, I'm sorry." They had already left when I muttered, "None of what you say is worth a penny." Obviously, I sat in silence on the couch, staring into space. I heard them moving around in the bedroom for about 30 minutes. Then Brad took the suitcase outside and loaded it into the car. A moment later, Sarah came out of the bedroom. She stopped and turned to me before walking out the door. She was about to say something, then changed her mind and left without a word. When Emily returned home later that day, I explained to her what had happened, being careful not to use any derogatory words about her mother or Uncle Brad. I didn't want to seem like someone who was trying to ruin her relationship with her mother. Perhaps looking back I should have, but I tried to make it as easy as possible for her, and I had complete trust in my relationship with my daughter. Probably didn't matter. In this state, a child aged 14 or older has a significant say in who he or she wants to live with, as long as both parents are considered fit. Unfortunately, being a lying cheater does not in itself make you an unfit parent. But I was confident in Emily's love for me and that she would choose to stay with old Dad. I hired a lawyer on Monday and made it clear that I wanted to go all the way. He said he would do his best, but the state laws were against me. I'd probably have to pay alimony at least until she marries the jerk, which I expected to happen soon, so it probably wouldn't be too bad. Child support would, of course, depend on where Emily ended up, so I was sure there wouldn't be any. All documents were submitted, and 3 weeks later we had a hearing. Sarah waived all claims for alimony since Brad already had a higher income, and they were going to get married immediately after the divorce was finalized. Perhaps she hoped that this would make it easier to achieve some level of civil relations. She was wrong. I sat with my lawyer and looked straight ahead, never once looking in her direction. I don't know if she was looking at me. Obviously, we sat quietly until the judge spoke with Emily in his office for almost an hour. I watched as she walked out and down the back hallway, exiting through a side door followed by a female sheriff. She was clearly crying. She probably felt sorry for how her mother would feel when she chose me. This warmed me up a little to the idea. Finally, the judge returned and announced his decision. The petition for divorce is granted and will become final in 120 days, as established by state law. As previously mentioned, Mrs. Sarah Harrison waives all claims to alimony, as well as any marital financial assets in the form of cash. Therefore, no alimony will be awarded, and all cash assets are awarded to Mr. Mark Harrison. All in all, it was going pretty well, I thought to myself. Our cash reserve wasn't huge, but it was nice to have. She definitely didn't need it. Brad had a lot more money than I did. The judge continued, "So the last issue before the court is custody of the minor child, Emily Harrison. I've spent the last hour talking to Miss Harrison. Let me emphasize that this is a very difficult situation for a child, essentially having to choose between parents, and her choice was made only after careful consideration of all possible consequences. At her request, I make the following determination. Mrs. Sarah Harrison will have custody of the minor Emily, as well as title to the home, so that Emily can continue her education in the same school district and environment." What the hell? I thought. She chose her over me. She didn't seem to love me as much as I thought. It seems like I completely misunderstood my entire family, including my daughter. I was naive and stupid to think that they actually loved and cared about me. It was like my parents' story all over again. I was just someone who could be dealt with, someone who could be used to achieve their goals, a source of funds and nothing more. And now they had a better source. The judge kept saying something about visitation rights, child support, and so on, but I didn't hear anything, and it really didn't matter anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I heard my lawyer trying to whisper soothing words to me, but it sounded like blah blah blah. I was finally brought back to reality when the judge banged his gavel. I wandered along the corridor in a fog. I barely realized that Emily hugged me and whispered, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy," with tears in her eyes, but I didn't have the strength to do anything. My betrayal by the only 3 people who mattered to me, indeed the only 3 people in my life, was complete. I had no one left. Sarah walked up behind Emily with pity in her eyes, while Brad wisely kept his distance. "As I promised, Mark, we'll try to get you to see her as often as possible, but I really think it's in her best interest. I guess you win and I lose. I'll be gone by the end of the week," I said, thinking I meant leaving the house. "Take your time, Mark. This will take time. We can stay in the condominium as long as necessary. I really hope we can get past this and learn to get along. You still mean a lot to me." I turned and looked at her. This time there was a sharp edge to my voice. "Don't feed me your crap. If I meant anything to you, this wouldn't have happened. Like I said, I'll be leaving by the end of the week. Take your daughter and leave me alone." "She's our daughter, Mark," Sarah said. "I'll see you next weekend," Emily said. That IT came out almost like a growl. "No, she made her choice. She chose you. Goodbye, Sarah." I left without looking back. Brad put his 2-bedroom apartment up for sale immediately after the hearing and expected to sell it fairly quickly. It was in a high-demand location, and he priced it to sell quickly. He'd already packed most of his things, ready to move into the house he used to share with Mark as soon as Mark notified the court that he had completely vacated. Keeping Emily's life as normal as possible was our priority, and Brad's apartment was in a different school district. We certainly didn't want this to happen. We fell in love despite our attempts to stop it. We didn't want to hurt Mark, but we just couldn't deny our feelings. Fate seemed to intervene, allowing us to be together for the first time. Mark had been called away on a business trip for an emergency job that would take all night, which was rare. Emily had asked for permission to sleep over with a friend that same night. I spent the night with Brad at his apartment, and it was everything we had dreamed of. I knew deep down that we were made for each other. We met 2 more times over the next 2 weeks before finally telling Mark. Each time, I felt more for Brad than ever. It was very difficult for me to be intimate with Mark during these 2 weeks, but my loyalty now belonged to Brad. We knew Mark would be hurt and upset, but we believed he would eventually recover. We could never have predicted what would actually happen. Mark and I had not spoken since the hearing. He told us that all communication must go through his lawyer. We sent his lawyer a message to pick up Emily from the apartment on Friday at 4 p.m. It was now 4:30 p.m., and he still wasn't there. Finally, I tried to reach him on his cell phone but found that it was disconnected. I was unable to contact his lawyer but left another message. "He may have lost track of time today," I told Brad. "I'll just take her there." Mark usually didn't lose track of such things. His job required him to be very organized, but with everything that was going on, it was understandable if it had escaped his notice just this once. Emily and I pulled up to the house, and it seemed like no one had been there in days. We went inside and found the house almost empty. All of Mark's belongings were gone, as were most of the belongings in the main part of the house. Emily's room was still full, and there were some of my things that I hadn't picked up. I noticed a piece of paper on the table. I picked it up and saw that it was a cash receipt. Attached to it was a note explaining that this was the full amount of child support for Mark until Emily graduated from high school, as required by the terms of the divorce. Someone knocked on the door, and I turned around thinking it was Mark, but it was Mrs. Patterson from next door. "He hasn't been here for several days. He took all the things out onto the lawn, and the next day a Salvation Army van came to pick them up. I think it was the day after your divorce," Mrs. Patterson said. "Did he leave you any contact information?" I asked. "His phone is switched off, and we have no other way to contact him. Emily, darling, could you come out for a minute?" Mrs. Patterson asked as she walked further into the kitchen next to me. We waited until she came out. I didn't want to say it in front of her. "Sarah, but he left me a message for you. I felt a sudden sense of foreboding. I was bracing myself for this to be bad news. Okay, what's the message? He said that the next time I see you, if you ask where he is, I should say that he will see you in hell. Pardon my language, and I'm so sorry, darling, for everything that happened. Tears rolled down my face. He left. He paid his child support in advance, gave away everything he couldn't carry, turned off his phone, and left. He left his daughter without a word. He said he would leave, but I assumed he meant out of the house, not out of our lives. He called Emily your daughter, but I thought it was said in a fit of passion. Mrs. Patterson left, and Emily returned to the house. She saw tears streaming down my face. What happened, Mom? I had no other answer. Any hope that it was a mistake or that everything would be okay was gone. I felt like I had to be completely honest. He's gone, honey. I'm sorry. Emily flared with anger. You did it. You kicked him out by sleeping with his best friend. My father left, and it's all because of you. She burst into tears. I hugged her and held my sobbing daughter close to me. I'm sorry, honey. I never thought this would happen, but things couldn't continue the way they were. I wish things were different, but there was no easy way to do it. We collapsed on the floor of the empty kitchen, sobbing in each other's arms for what seemed like hours, but in reality was about 10 minutes, until we finally managed to pull ourselves together. We drove back to the condo in silence, and Emily immediately went to her room and slammed the door, bursting into tears again. What happened? Brad asked. He left, I answered. He sold everything in the house, turned off his phone, left a check for the full amount of his child support. I showed him the receipt. He told our neighbor if we asked where he was, she'd say she'd see us in hell. Sarah, I'm scared. What if he does something stupid? We sat on the sofa, and I leaned on Brad's shoulder. I just couldn't believe what was happening. I never would have believed he would react like that, Brad said. He was always the one who could handle a crisis. When the two of us did something stupid and broke bottles outside the school one night and the cops showed up, we all ran away. But there was no chance of getting away. Everyone was gone, but he calmly took the risk so the others could leave. We asked him the next day why he did it, and he said it was the only way. They needed to catch someone, and as soon as they did, he hoped they would stop looking for the others. He considered himself the most logical choice since he already had a criminal record. He sacrificed himself for us. It was quite logical for him. I knew that he would be hurt, but I'm sure he will understand that it makes sense, and we will somehow move on, Brad said. Now we can't do anything until he shows up. The good thing about being an electrician is that there will always be work, no matter where you are. It's a little harder to keep yourself off the grid, so no one can track you. I canceled all my credit cards and paid for everything in cash. I lived 3 states away from where they probably thought I went. I was able to find a local contractor who agreed to pay me cash in exchange for a slightly lower hourly rate than I deserved. Since I didn't really need the money and wanted to work, I agreed. Are you on the run? He asked me. Not really, I replied. Not from the law or anything like that. I just don't want to be found. That's normal, he said. I also have an ex-wife. I smiled at this. I slept in my car and found a local gas station nearby where I could shower and shave. I had money for a room, but I didn't want to leave my name on anything. They probably weren't looking. After all, they had already demonstrated that they didn't care about me, especially after they got what they wanted. But you never know. With the onset of cold weather, I needed something more substantial. I found an advertisement for a room for rent. The owner of the mobile home, an elderly woman, told me to just call her Miss Ruth. Can we do this without a formal lease? I asked. She was a wise woman and understood that I had my reasons. I do not need money. I have plenty of that. I just need some company and some help improving this place. How about you just stay here unofficially in exchange for help around the house and company for 4 or 5 nights a week? It was a good offer and I agreed. The divorce was finalized in mid-January, and about a week after that was Emily's birthday, her 15th birthday. She hoped that her father would send something, but the day passed, and nothing arrived. I was heartbroken to hear her cry into her pillow later. I found Brad in our bedroom, which of course used to be the bedroom I shared with him. He was reading, which he did regularly. I really thought she would get something from him, even if he sent it through his lawyer to us. I really thought he would send something. Can he really give up on her completely just because she chose to live with us? I asked. That surprises me too, Brad replied. Obviously, we underestimated how much it hurt him, but we can't let this ruin our life together, honey. Otherwise, none of this would make sense. We should try to be happy and just deal with Mark when and if he decides to re-enter our lives. But perhaps you should consider having Emily see a psychologist. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Since it seems like he won't be coming back, we will need to help her accept this. I had been living with Miss Ruth for almost 3 years, just going to work and coming home. I was actually at home with her almost every evening. I had no interest in going out, and I certainly had no interest in meeting women. It was January, and less than 2 months later, I celebrated, albeit half-heartedly, my 40th birthday. Although I tried to push my past life out of my consciousness, it still returned to my thoughts from time to time. I knew that my ex-wife was also turning 40 in a few months. She married Brad 2 months after their divorce was finalized, so their 3-year anniversary was approaching. I was following the wedding announcements in the online version of the local newspaper and got thoroughly drunk the day I saw their announcement. I also knew that Emily had turned 18 and gotten a new car for her birthday. For a long time now, they had not expected that anything would come from her father on her birthday, but they still continued to maintain at least some hope. But again, the day passed, and nothing came. On graduation day, as Emily sat among the other 347 graduates of her high school, she cried quietly about what her life could have been. Mom and Dad should still be married, and they should be sitting together waiting for her to walk across the stage. This was one of the goals they had talked about for years, and they should have shared it together. Maybe it was selfish, but that's how she felt. Of course, Mom was happy. Once they could somehow put the pain of the separation and the disappearance of their dad behind them, they settled into a good rhythm. Mom clearly loved Brad and vice versa, probably more than she ever loved Dad. But Emily still couldn't shake the feeling that none of this was supposed to happen. She scanned the crowd and saw Mom and Brad. They waved to her when their eyes met. Not far away, she also saw a friend's parents. They were very supportive during the divorce and even afterward. They tried to explain to her the pain that Dad must have felt, although they emphasized that they did not approve of his actions. They meant a lot to her, and she was glad they were here. She continued to look around and saw several other familiar faces, but suddenly one caught her attention. He sat towards the back, wore glasses, and had quite long hair. She was confident she knew his face. She stood up to get a better look, but just as suddenly, he disappeared. Perhaps it was her imagination. The next 4 years passed relatively quickly and without incident. Despite our efforts, including several visits to fertility specialists, Brad and I were unable to conceive. I really wanted to give Brad a baby, but it just wasn't meant to be. However, we remained very much in love and were happy with our choice to be together. We, of course, regretted some of the consequences, but they could not be completely avoided. Emily was preparing to graduate from Ohio State and planned to pursue a career in teaching. She had recently started dating a young man named Benjamin, and they seemed like a very good couple. As often happens when Emily reached important milestones in her life, I began to think about Mark. It had been about 7 years since we last heard anything from him. We contacted his lawyer once, but he said he had no message for us and that he would contact us if anything came up. Otherwise, he couldn't tell us anything, even if he knew where Mark was. I took solace in the fact that we were never notified of his death, so I assumed he was still alive somewhere. I couldn't help but wonder what he was doing and whether he had been able to move on after the pain I caused him. Continuing to live off the grid, I now rented a room in a multi-unit building, again on a cash basis without a formal tenancy agreement, thanks to a recommendation from Miss Ruth. I was already 44 years old and still in great shape. Miss Ruth began having health problems about a year ago, and her family was forced to move her into a care facility. Her mobile home was sold to another family. I still worked for the same company and was paid in cash, although my salary had increased. I couldn't say I was happy, but I was at peace with where my life was. That is, until I went to Denny's for lunch. Of course, I had been to Denny's many times before, although it had been about 3 weeks since the last time. I knew the staff well. Gail, the lovely 60-something African-American woman who worked behind the counter and whom I had known since I got here, saw me when I walked in. She knew my story inside and out, having been an excellent communicator over the years and promising to remain discreet. She was the only person here I trusted. I was about to sit at the counter, but she stopped me. No, Mr. Mark. Today you need to sit in that booth right there, she said, pointing to one of the booths at the front of the restaurant. Knowing that Gail always had a reason for her actions, I obediently took a seat in the second booth in the row, hoping that at some point she would explain her demand. It soon became clear what she was up to when a waitress I had not seen before approached my table. She was tall, slender, blonde, coincidentally or not, the exact opposite of short, brunette, and curvy Sarah, and beautiful. She had a wonderful smile. Her badge said Rebecca. "Good morning," she said. "How are you today?" "Much better now," I replied. It was corny, I know, but she smiled like it was the sweetest thing she'd ever heard, even though it was probably the millionth time she'd heard it. I ordered my usual and waited as Rebecca disappeared around the corner. I jumped up and caught up with Gail. "I know what you're up to," I said. "Okay," she replied. "Or you're not as smart as I thought." Then she went about her business. Rebecca checked on me several times before bringing my food and then promptly delivered my plate. I watched her interact with other customers and noticed her glancing at me several times. While I was looking at her, she seemed to feel the same connection that I did, or maybe she was just afraid that I would stalk her and wanted to be able to give a good description. She approached me again. "My shift is ending, so I wanted to wish you a good day," she said. She did not emphasize saying goodbye to other clients, so it had to mean something. I decided to take the risk. "Tell me, would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" Her face lit up with a smile. "I would love it. You can pick me up here at 6. I stayed in my booth until she left. She winked at me as she passed me on the way out. I immediately walked up to the counter to talk to Gail, who I was sure lived here. "Okay, Cupid, what's her story?" I asked. Gail told me everything she knew. She's 35 and has an 8-year-old daughter named Sophia. Her husband couldn't hold down a job and ran away with her best friend when Sophia was just 3 years old. This sounded familiar, I thought. She moved here hoping to start over and hasn't even dated since. I immediately thought of you. You will have a good time together. I can feel it. Does she know you set us up? I asked. Gail just smiled slightly. She would never tell me. I arrived at Denny's at 5:45 p.m., not wanting to be late, flowers in hand. I sat very nervously in the booth by the door and waited for her to arrive. At exactly 6, Rebecca appeared behind me. She had been waiting in the back room. She was nervous and didn't want to wait in her apartment. She was wearing a white floral dress and pink high heels that almost matched her height with me. She wore just a little makeup and looked absolutely stunning, and I told her this. "Thank you very much. That's nice of you," she said. "You look quite attractive too." She hooked her arm through mine, and we walked the 2 blocks to Murphy's Steakhouse. I know it sounds like a romantic cliché, but Rebecca's hand really felt like it belonged there. Maybe it was just because no one had been around for a long time, but I didn't feel that way. We sat at a table opposite each other. Gail said she was 35, but tonight she looked hardly older than 25. Her blonde hair was mostly down, but some of it was in a braid. I found myself in an awkward position. I wanted to know everything about her, but I didn't want to talk about what I usually call my first life. In my mind, the person who lived the first 37 years of my life was not really me, or at least not the me I was now. I was sometimes asked if I had children, and my answer was always no, because as far as I was concerned, when Emily chose to live with her mother, she chose them over me. Of course, I wish I could say that I even really believed all of this, but I knew that part of me still loved and missed her. It was just buried deep underneath all the pain and anger. To limit my exposure, I tried to keep the conversation as relevant as possible. "So how long have you been working at Denny's?" I asked, hoping for a safe start. "Only a couple of weeks," she replied. "I've been a waitress before, and I really enjoy interacting with people. They can give me day shifts so I can work while my daughter is at school." "How old is your daughter?" I asked. I already knew the answer from Gail, but I wanted to make sure I was getting the information directly from Rebecca. "She's 8, and she's the light of my life," she said. "Her name is Sophia, and she is so smart and beautiful." "Do you have children?" "Crap. No, I don't have any," I said as naturally as possible. Technically, it wasn't a lie because I don't have kids, as far as I was concerned. I once had one, but not anymore, at least not in this life. "Do you like children?" Rebecca asked. "Because any man who ends up in my life must be ready to become a father to Sophia. This doesn't mean I'm looking for a father for her. I'm doing great on my own, but I don't want to find myself in a situation where my daughter and I are one thing and my husband and I are another. We will be a family and we will act like a family. Is that clear?" "I see," I replied. I couldn't agree more. And to answer your question, yes, I really like children. Emily's face, the last one I remembered, suddenly appeared in my mind. As the evening went on, I admitted that I had been married and divorced before, but tried my best not to reveal too many details, explaining that I still felt a lot of anger and pain about it. This was true, but I was determined not to let it affect my future relationships, which was also true. We only had dinner, and then I offered to take her home, but she asked me to drop her off again at the restaurant. "Mark, I admit I really like you," Rebecca explained. "I felt a connection the first time I talked to you at my table, and I still feel it tonight. But I can't let you take me home because Sophia is there. My neighbor has kindly agreed to look after her when I need to work longer or go out. But I'm not yet ready for Sophia to see me with someone until I'm absolutely sure. I hope you understand." "I completely understand, Rebecca," I replied. "You have her to take care of. I'll let you decide these things. Can we meet again tomorrow?" "I can't go out tomorrow night," she said. "I don't want to be a burden to Mrs. Pritchett, but I work tomorrow morning, and I'd really like you to come and have lunch on my shift. Can we consider this our second date?" "I would really like that. Maybe Gail will let me sit with you for a few minutes since she introduced us. I wasn't sure you knew about this." "See you in the morning," she said. I kissed her on the cheek. I had been working hard since 7 a.m. this morning. The school has a morning program that allows me to leave until work starts, and it was a very busy morning. But I immediately felt it when Mark walked through the door at about 11:45. I felt it before I saw him. All my tables were occupied, so he sat at the counter with Gail until one was free and immediately took it as soon as it was cleared. I really wanted to spend time with him, but I was at work, and that should have been my priority. However, I was able to steal a quick 5 minutes to sit with him. He extended his arms across the table towards me, and I took both of his hands in mine. "I wish I had more time to sit with you." "It's okay. I know you're working," he said. "When can I ask you out again?" Like I said, I don't want to take advantage of Mrs. Pritchett's kindness. How about we do something in 2 evenings? I think I can bear it if I can come to breakfast and see you in the meantime. Absolutely. I need to get back to work. Yes, I also have things to do today. See you tomorrow. I stood up and quickly kissed her on the cheek. Thank you for coming to see me. It means a lot to me. We both smiled widely as I left. 2 evenings later, I picked Rebecca up at Denny's again, But this time we went to a country bar and grill on the outskirts of town. We danced several times, and Rebecca was often asked to dance. To my great delight, she declined all offers, making it clear that she was here with me and that all the spots on her dance card were reserved. It reminded me that when I went dancing with Sarah, she didn't mind dancing with other guys, and I didn't mind either. But Rebecca herself said no. It wasn't even discussed. I really appreciated it. As the evening progressed, I could tell Rebecca was enjoying herself, and I found myself more attracted to her than ever. You know, she said, looking a bit shy, I have to admit something. No one has made such an impression on me for a long time. I'm actually surprising myself a little. Rebecca, you may not have noticed, but I doubt it's been a long time since you affected a man like this. You're so beautiful. She looked at me with a mixture of nervousness and desire. Would you like to come back to my place? I mean, just for a little while. Sophia is staying at Mrs. Pritchett's tonight. I broke a few traffic laws on the way to her apartment, but as they say, it's not illegal unless you get caught. We were both sweaty from dancing, but neither of us cared. Please be gentle, okay? I haven't been with anyone since my husband left 5 years ago. This revelation was both heartbreaking and humbling. Sadness that such a beautiful woman has been alone for so long, but an honor that I was the one she trusted. She smiled at me. You speak well, she said. This is also a long time for me, so we will learn together. I refused to take her to Denny's so late. I would take her home or she would stay with me. Her daughter was already asleep by then, and I wasn't ready to risk Rebecca's safety. She let me take her home. We kissed for a few more minutes at her door before I reluctantly let her go. We were together for about 2 months, and Mark was patient. He came to my work almost every day, and we went out about every 3 or 4 days. Mrs. Pritchett assured me that she was happy to look after Sophia at any time, but I still didn't want to abuse it too much. We also met occasionally when I was free and Sophia was still at school, but it wasn't often since I tried to schedule as much work as possible while Sophia was at school. We both knew that Gail had pushed us toward each other, and we both noticed how she looked at us with that "I told you so" expression. I really fell in love with him and decided it was time to take the next step in our relationship. How do you feel about dinner at my house tomorrow? I asked. That would be great, he replied. Will it be just the 2 of us? I paused for a moment to create some tension, then smiled and said, No, Sophia will be there too, if you don't mind. Rebecca, honey, I don't just mind. I am delighted. But are you sure you're ready? I'm sure. It's time. I think she loves stuffed animals. I arrived right on time, holding a small green bear in my arms. I was nervous when I knocked on her door. Sophia opened the door herself. Rebecca stood behind her a couple of steps away. Good evening. You must be Sophia, the lady of the house? I said. Sophia wore a light pink dress and had her hair in ponytails adorned with pink ribbons of the same color. Rebecca was wearing sweatpants and a light sweater. Her hair was straightened, though it usually had natural waves. Yes, sir, it's me. Please come in. I was impressed by her manners. Thank you, Miss Sophia. Tell me, can you help me with one problem? I picked up the bear. I have this friend who needs a home and someone to love him. He can't stay at my house. There is a rule against pets where I live. Do you think you could take care of him for me? Her eyes lit up. Really? He's for me? Well, only if you promise to take very good care of him. I promise. What's his name? I was hoping you could give him a name. He's been waiting for the right person to name him. Can I call him Mr. Green? I think that's a perfect name. Rebecca was watching us with tears in her eyes, and I knew I had passed the first test. From that night forward, I gradually became part of their daily routine. I began coming over for dinner several times a week and would often help Sophia with her homework. On weekends, the 3 of us would go places together, the zoo, the park, sometimes just to the grocery store. I loved the feeling of being part of a family again. Rebecca was everything Sarah had never been. She was honest, faithful, and completely committed to our relationship. When she looked at me, I felt like I was the center of her universe. She never made me feel like I was competing with anyone else for her attention or affection. Sophia was a remarkable child. She was bright, funny, and had the kind of innocent curiosity that reminded me of Emily when she was small. She started calling me Mark Dad, as a joke at first, but it stuck, and I found that I loved hearing it. I helped her with science projects, attended her school plays, and taught her how to change a bicycle tire. For the first time in years, I felt like I was making a real difference in a child's life. As the months passed, I found myself thinking less and less about my old life. The pain was still there, buried deep, but it was manageable now. I had something positive to focus on, something worth building. I began to believe that maybe I deserved happiness after all. One morning, I picked Rebecca up for lunch, and she seemed out of sorts. Scattered is perhaps the best description. "Are you okay, hun? You seem to have something on your mind." "No, baby, I'm fine. Just a little tired." "You made me a little tired last night," she said with a smile. I didn't press further, but I wasn't completely convinced. The truth was, Rebecca had made a discovery that was eating at her. The day before, she had been alone in my apartment while I ran to the store for milk. She looked around. I didn't have much stuff, and we didn't spend much time here since we were usually at her house because of Sophia. This was actually only the second time she'd been here alone. She could see almost everything just by standing in the center of the room. My home office with a small desk and filing cabinet, the full kitchen with a microwave and stove, a closet where I kept my clothes, and of course, a bedroom with a king-size bed. She looked through the things hanging in the closet. She'd already worn my shirts as nightgowns several times after I left them at her house. They always smelled like me, and she really liked inhaling that scent when she fell asleep. She happened to notice a box of files squeezed into the corner of the closet. The lid was missing, and she could see it wasn't very full. She wondered why these things weren't with the rest of my files. Her curiosity got the better of her. She took a quick look and noticed that the dates went back several years before I moved here. It was a time in my life that I almost refused to talk about. She knew a little, but I really didn't like discussing it. It seemed very painful to me, so she didn't press. But this man was the one she wanted to marry, and she felt like she knew so little about me. She hesitated, wondering whether she should take this opportunity to learn more about my past. She didn't even have to make it clear that she knew. It would only be for her own peace of mind. So with a little prayer that I would forgive her if I ever found out, she pulled out the first folder. She found my marriage certificate, which didn't surprise her, and my divorce decree, which was a relief to see. I think part of her was afraid that I didn't talk about my past because I was still married. She looked at the terms of the divorce and was shocked to learn that I had a daughter. Didn't I say I didn't have children? Besides that surprise, she saw that I received all the cash in our accounts. Custody, child support, visitation. Everything seemed pretty normal. She took a closer look at the information about my daughter. Her name was Emily, and she would be around 22 years old now, which means she was only 14 years old when we divorced. Maybe when I said I didn't have kids, I meant no little kids like Sophia. Of course, she couldn't ask me about it, or I'd know she was digging. But she was sure there was more to it than met the eye. On another page, she found a contact number, the number of my ex-wife, Sarah. She quickly packed everything back and returned it to its place. Maybe Gail knew something. She had known me for many years. She'd start with her. The next morning, Rebecca came to work early to talk to Gail. "Gail, what do you know about Mark's life before he moved here?" Gail quickly turned to her, and a sparkle flashed in her eyes. The concern in her voice was obvious. "Why? Why do you ask?" "I accidentally found something in his apartment last night. Did you know he has a daughter? He told me he doesn't have children, and he doesn't tell me much about his past. There must be some reason why he created all this distance from his old life. Sweetie, you need to let it go. I've known Mark for a long time. He's a good man, and he'll take care of you. But if you dig, you might not like what you find. Trust me. Let it go. So you know something? Rebecca asked. Please, Gail. I love him so much. Help me. Gail just shook her head and said, Let it go, honey. Just let it go. Part of Rebecca really wanted to take her advice, but the more she thought about it throughout the day, the more she realized she couldn't let it go. I came in for breakfast as usual and she tried to act normal. We talked about our plans for the evening before I had to go to work. She kissed me and sent me on my way. When her shift ended, she returned home to think some more. As she sat in her apartment, she realized that she had to find out what made me leave my daughter. She needed to know this because she had her own daughter. Sophia loved me as if I were her father, and I seemed to love her as if she were my own. If I could leave one daughter, I could do it again if the circumstances were right. Until she knew what those circumstances were, she couldn't risk Sophia's heart. She was her mother, and Sophia was her priority, even despite her own happiness. Since Gail couldn't tell her anything and I had made it clear that I wouldn't either, she had only one course of action. The phone display simply showed blocked number. Rebecca started answering calls from unknown or blocked numbers just in case it was me, but when she picked up the phone, she had no hope that it would be anything other than a telemarketer. Hello? Yes, hello, I'm trying to reach Sarah Harrison. Rebecca almost hung up. Someone calling under my ex-wife's old married name was almost certainly trying to sell something using outdated information. But something in the tone of the voice, the uncertainty in it, made her stop. Well, it's me, although now I'm Davis. Who's calling, please? Mrs. Davis, my name is Rebecca. We've never met, but... She took a deep breath. But I'm dating your ex-husband, Mark. Did I actually hear that correctly? Sarah just stood there, the phone pressed to her ear, not believing what she just heard. She had thought about what she would say if this ever happened, but at that moment, she could not form a single coherent thought, let alone words. Mrs. Davis? Sorry. Please call me Sarah. You just caught me off guard. Give me a minute, please. Sarah put the phone down and rubbed her face as if waking up from a dream. She wished Brad were here. He would have known what to say, or at least helped her figure it out. But he was still at work. She pulled herself together and picked up the phone again. Rebecca, sorry for the wait. It's just... I understand, Sarah, Rebecca said. I don't know much, but I know you haven't heard from him in a while. 8 years, Sarah replied. 8 years have passed. How is he doing? Where is he? He's fine. He's doing well, Rebecca replied. Sorry, but I can't tell you where he is. I have a feeling you wouldn't be too happy about it. I'm already risking our relationship just by calling you. I did some digging to get some information. He never really told me about his past. It hurt me a little that he started a new life somewhere, found a girlfriend, but still didn't acknowledge our old life. Of course, I understand. I'm glad to hear he's doing well. He's a very good man, Rebecca. He didn't deserve what I did to him. If you don't mind, Sarah, what exactly did you do to him? I'm guessing he didn't tell you. Well, the short version is, we were together for over 16 years and married for 16. I divorced him to marry his best friend, who he'd known since 3rd grade. God. This sounds terrible when I say it out loud. Wow. My husband did the same thing to me. He divorced me for my best friend. Small world. Huh? We weren't together that long, really? But that doesn't explain why he did what he did. People get divorced every day, even for reasons like yours, but they don't leave and abandon their children. There must be something else. Oh, that's right, Sarah said. She explained the circumstances that led to my departure. I don't think he saw it as abandoning his daughter because in his mind, she rejected him first by choosing to stay with me and Brad. In fact, right after the divorce hearing, he called her your daughter and said he would leave in a week. But I didn't understand what he meant. Well, I can't say I agree with what he did, but I can understand it a little better now, Rebecca said. I really didn't want to ruin the stability, but I didn't know if I would have another chance at this. Rebecca, I know you don't owe me anything, and I'm not asking for anything for myself, Sarah said. Emily is getting married in a few months. She has tried to move on with her life, trying to cope with the fact that she hasn't heard from her father since she was 14. Not even receiving a birthday card. But as the wedding approaches, she cries all the time because her dad won't walk her down the aisle. She's been dreaming about this since she was a child. If you have any influence on him, if you can do something. Rebecca didn't get mad or hang up. She considered Sarah's request and gave a measured answer, considering that she had a place in my life and that she had something to lose. I'm sure you know what you're asking, Sarah. If I even mention it, he'll probably leave me and move away again. He can get a job anywhere and he has enough money. I don't even know how I could bring up this topic, let alone convince him to go. Of course, I understand. Maybe it's best to just let sleeping dogs lie. Thank you very much for calling. Please save my number. I would really appreciate it if you would call from time to let me know how he's doing. It would give me great relief. I'll save your number, Rebecca said. But I can't honestly promise more than that. I hope you understand. Sarah immediately called Brad at work to tell him what happened. Did you get a phone number from her or something we could use? No, her number was blocked, and she didn't tell me her last name. But maybe this is just the first step to something more. Rebecca ended the call glad she made it. She learned a lot about what she wanted to know, but now the question was, what, if anything, to do about it? I mean, Sarah was right. She didn't owe them anything. Why would she ruin the best relationship she'd ever had for their sake? But it was not for their sake, she realized. It was for her and for Sophia. What would she want someone to do for her and her daughter if she were in Sarah and Emily's shoes? She wished someone would help, if only for Sophia's sake. She doubted it made much difference to Sarah in and of itself. She wanted this for her daughter. And what if, God forbid, something happened between me and her in the future that made things bad? Would I leave Sophia to avoid pain like I did with Emily? Or were the circumstances that forced me to leave Emily so painful that I acted uncharacteristically? She remembered her own childhood, her father who cheated on her mother and left them. Of course, I wasn't unfaithful, but regardless of the reason, it was still a little girl who lost her daddy. And so she made perhaps the hardest decision of her life, one that may cost her the man she loves. It was wrong for me to leave my daughter the way I did, regardless of her decision at the time. How could she trust Sophia's heart to me otherwise? But she couldn't just ask me about it. It would be too easy for me to leave again. While Emily was just a name from my past, I needed to see her, to face what I had done and who I had left behind. The next day after her shift, Rebecca called Sarah again. Rebecca, I definitely didn't expect you to call so soon. Does this mean something about Mark? She asked. Sarah, I've made a very difficult decision that I hope doesn't cost me Mark, but it has to be done. I need to ask you for two things. First, I need Emily's phone number. Second, I'm going to tell her where he is, but I need you to swear to silence about it. I cannot let you know where he is. Maybe someday, but not now. Can you do it? Of course, Sarah replied. My only concern is Emily. And assuming there are some expenses involved in what you're planning, Brad and I will pay for everything. She gave Rebecca Emily's number and then asked her to give her a few minutes to get her daughter ready before she called. Rebecca waited 15 minutes before dialing and talking to my daughter for the first time, under less than ideal circumstances. Good afternoon. This is Emily Harrison. Are you Emily? This is Rebecca. Yes, it's me, Emily answered. Apparently, my mother explained what was going on. She did, and she's already stressed that anything you tell me about my father must remain a secret from her. I'm sorry that happened, but I understand, and I'm willing to do whatever you ask. You'll need to fly to Port Columbus International Airport. The sooner the better. I'll meet you there and take you to your father. You'll stay with me while you're here, and I guess we'll see what happens. "Can I ask you something, Rebecca?" Emily inquired. "Why are you risking your relationship for me? You don't even know me." "That's a fair question, Emily," Rebecca said. "I was once in your shoes, and my daughter is in your shoes now. Just a girl wanting her father in her life. I just feel like some things are so important. I need to know the person I hope to marry, and I need him to right the wrongs with you." Even as they spoke, Emily booked a plane ticket to Columbus for the next day. She emailed Rebecca the schedule, and Rebecca would pick her up herself. Now all that was left was to wait. "Where is Sophia?" I asked when I came over that evening. I was madly in love with this woman, more than I had ever been in love with Sarah, which I hate to admit, gave me some insight into why Sarah made her decision. But they did it behind my back, and this discovery did not change anything in my anger and hatred towards them. As I drove Rebecca back to her apartment, I almost asked. I had the ring in my pocket and everything was ready, but I wanted it to be something more special very soon. As she closed the door, she gave me a look that was somewhere between melancholy and sadness. I hoped she was okay. After dropping Sophia off at school, Rebecca headed to the airport. She waited at baggage claim with a sign with Emily's name on it. They had exchanged photos, but there were a lot of people. She kept her eye on all the women who resembled her photo, but as soon as she saw Emily, she knew it was her. And sure enough, as soon as Emily saw the sign, she smiled and walked straight towards her. "You must be Rebecca," she said. "I'm Emily. Damn, you're even more beautiful in person than in photos. I understand why Dad likes you." "It's so nice to hear that," Rebecca replied. "You yourself are very beautiful. You have your father's eyes." Emily smiled. "Are you ready to see your father?" "I was ready for 8 years. I hope everything goes at least half as well as I imagined." They piled into Rebecca's little car and drove home to the small town where I had settled. As they approached the outskirts of town, Rebecca stopped and called Rosie, my company dispatcher, putting the phone on speaker. "Rosie, can you tell me where Mark works now?" "Of course, Rebecca," Rosie replied. "He's at the department store on 4th and Main, and Rebecca, he's got a couple more jobs to do today. So if you're going to do him in the back of a truck again, you better do it real quick." She chuckled as she hung up. Rebecca was too slow to end the call before this little news was broadcast. She felt herself blush as Emily smiled knowingly at her. "The back of his truck, right? Interesting," she said. "I was frisky, and he looked so good, all sweaty and everything. I couldn't resist." As they approached the intersection near the department store, Rebecca pointed at my truck. "We'll have to wait for him to come out. I'll stand by the driver's door, and you wait a few feet behind so the truck is between you and him." They waited there for about 20 minutes before Rebecca finally heard my voice talking to the department store manager as I was leaving the store. At that point, she gave Emily a thumbs up and waited. I fixed the short and the wiring that was causing the light in the restroom to flicker and headed for the door. I had 2 more calls to finish before I could get back to Rebecca and Sophia and maybe find a good time to ask the question. I carried the ring with me, waiting for the right opportunity, although I would soon have to create such an opportunity if it did not present itself. As I rounded the corner to where my truck was parked, I noticed Rebecca's car parked behind it. Then I saw her standing at the door of my truck. I felt the box with the ring in my pocket and headed towards it. "Hey, baby," I called. "This is a pleasant surprise." Then I saw her, the other her, and all the pain and anger flashed into my mind. "Hello, Father." In an instant, I experienced a flurry of emotions, none of which were positive. I felt the pain of my family's betrayal all over again, fear of what Emily's presence might mean for my future, and anger at Rebecca for apparently being the catalyst for bringing my past back to destroy my present. I took a deep breath and then spoke in a tone devoid of emotion. "Emily." I turned to Rebecca. "I'm guessing you found the box." She nodded. I looked at my watch. "Well, that was great, but I have 2 more jobs today, and I'm running out of time." I put my tools in the truck and then opened the door. "Dad," I'm getting married. Yes, I answered. Congratulations. I paused, unable to suppress my inner anger. Try not to become a cheater like your mother. With these words, I climbed into the truck and slammed the door. But it didn't end there. Emily was now standing at my window, banging on it with both fists. I saw you. I know you still love me and care about me because I saw you, she screamed to be heard through the glass, which I then lowered. What are you talking about, Emily? My high school graduation. You were there in the back, trying not to be seen, but it was you. That's how I know you still love me. I don't know what you think you saw, Emily, but it definitely wasn't me. I started the truck and drove off. Damn. I knew I had to get rid of those things, but I tried to be careful and keep some things just in case. And here again, my old life got in the way and came to destroy me. Obviously, once was not enough. I drove for about 10 minutes before stopping to collect my thoughts. How could Rebecca do this to me? I was happy as hell, finally, after all these years. I found love and I was happy. I should have known it wouldn't last. Happiness did not seem to be my destiny, and this was the last time I made such a mistake. It has never happened in my life that someone didn't betray me, so I see no reason why it should be different now. Finally, I collected myself and headed to my next job. I would finish my work today and then call my boss and tell him that my past has finally caught up with me and that I will leave. He will understand. Hello, Father. In an instant, I experienced a flurry of emotions, none of which were positive. I felt the pain of my family's betrayal, fear of what Emily's presence might mean for the future, and anger at Rebecca for apparently being the catalyst for it. I took a deep breath and then spoke in a tone devoid of emotion. Emily. I turned to Rebecca. I'm guessing you found the box. She nodded. I looked at my watch. Well, that was great, but I have 2 more jobs today, and I'm running out of time. I put my tools in the truck and then opened the door. Dad, I'm getting married. Yes, I answered. Congratulations. I paused, unable to suppress my inner anger. Try not to become a cheater like your mother. With these words, I climbed into the truck and slammed the door. But it didn't end there. Emily was now standing at my window, banging on it with both fists. I saw you. I know you still love me and care about me because I saw you, she screamed to be heard through the glass, which I then lowered. What are you talking about, Emily? My high school graduation. You were there in the back, trying not to be seen, but it was you. That's how I know you still love me. I don't know what you think you saw, Emily, but it definitely wasn't me. I started the truck and drove off. Damn. I knew I had to get rid of those things, but I tried to be careful and keep some things just in case. And here again, my old life got in the way and came to destroy me. Obviously, once was not enough. I drove for about 10 minutes before stopping to collect my thoughts. How could Rebecca do this to me? I was happy as hell, finally, after all these years. I found love and I was happy. I should have known it wouldn't last. Happiness did not seem to be my destiny, and this was the last time I made such a mistake. It has never happened in my life that someone didn't betray me, so I see no reason why it should be different now. Finally, I collected myself and headed to my next job. I would finish my work today and then call my boss and tell him that my past has finally caught up with me and that I will leave. He will understand. Emily cried on my shoulder. I was completely shocked by how cold Mark was. After all, this is his own child. What she did wasn't that bad. Kids make those choices all the time. So obviously it was more about him, about the pain he felt. Mark has never been anything but loving towards Sophia and me. It seems so out of character for him. I put Emily in the car and drove back to my apartment. You will stay with me for a while. This was only the first attempt. I will talk to him again when he finishes work. I tried to console her, although I wasn't sure myself. It was already past 5 p.m. when I returned to my apartment. To my surprise, neither Rebecca nor Emily were waiting for me as I expected. This was for the best, as it made it easier for me to leave. Damn, I really loved her and Sophia. I didn't want to leave, but Rebecca left me no choice. She tried to find my personal hell and brought it down on me again. Now they knew where I was, and how could I trust Rebecca after what she did to me? Damn, damn, damn. I immediately started packing my suitcases and things. All the furniture came with the room, so all I had left were clothes and a few personal items. What Rebecca had left would have to be lost. I ignored the knocking on the door, but when I heard it open, I knew it had to be Rebecca. She had the only other key. She closed the door and just leaned against the wall, watching me for a few minutes before speaking. Are you running away again? I have no choice. Emily now knows where I am, which probably means, oh God, I'm guessing you were talking to Sarah. Yes, she had the only contact number in your files. Luckily, she was still using the same phone number. Yes, how convenient. My sarcasm was obvious. So I guess now you know the whole humiliating story. Great. She came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder. She told me what happened, Mark. But you have nothing to be ashamed of. The same thing happened to me, remember? But I let it go and lived my life and found happiness with you. Did the same thing happen to you? I don't think so. You haven't been together for 16 years. It wasn't the best friend you've known even longer than that. Your daughter didn't choose to leave you alone for the people who just destroyed your life. So no, it wasn't the same. My voice began to rise. Say, you know me well enough. Maybe you can tell me what it is about me that makes everyone I love decide to betray and leave me. Mark, this isn't. Of course it is. First, my mother cheated on my father and left us. Then the dear old man couldn't stand it and drove himself into a nearby oak tree. So obviously I wasn't worthy of living for. They sent me back to the woman who left me. You can imagine how I was received there. With a new husband who never wanted children but at least needed someone to take care of the yard and bring him beer. Rebecca, if I wasn't fast enough with one of my chores, I'd get hit on the head or whatever he could do without leaving a mark. Eventually, he decided a few marks weren't so bad and might remind me to be faster next time. And what did Mom say when she found out what her husband was doing? She thanked him for trying to make something out of her useless child. You were interested in the scars on my back? Here you go, answer, dear Rebecca. Wait, I'm not done yet. So I finally got out of there, built a successful career, and married the girl of my dreams. I had a close friend and a daughter whom I adored. I actually did well for a while. And what happened next? Well, you know the answer. Yes, 2 of the 3 people I lived for came together to destroy me again. 2 people I should have relied on and trusted crushed my faith in them. But even then, I tried to keep fighting. I still had my daughter, and of course she wouldn't reject me, right? After all, her mother and good old Uncle Brad have each other, and Dad has no one in the whole world, right? She would choose to live with me to help me deal with this. We've always been close, so of course she will. No. She smelled the same smell as everyone else and turned away from me. She chose her stepfather over her own father. So tell me, Rebecca, because maybe you've already figured it out, what is it about me that makes everyone hate me so much? I wandered around the room while shouting all this out. I looked out the window when I finished, then turned to Rebecca when she spoke. Honey, Emily doesn't hate you. She was going through probably the most traumatic thing a child can experience. She just wanted a little normalcy, to know that no matter what, she could come home and her mom would be there as always. She relied on promises that she could see you whenever she wanted and that it would be enough for you. How would you like it if the choices you made at 14 hung over you for the rest of your life? I later realized that she made a very important point about choices at age 14, but I was too angry to let something like that get in my way at that point. Why couldn't you just leave it at that, Rebecca? I was finally happy. I had you and Sophia. I left it all behind for the most part. This life didn't want me anymore, so I left to create a life that wouldn't include any of them. I finally started to look forward to the future, and now you open this damn box again. These people mean nothing to you. Just tell me why. I'm very happy with you, baby, And I didn't mean to find anything, Rebecca explained. But I love you, and I wanted to know more about you. When I looked in the box, I was hoping to learn something about you so that you wouldn't be such a mystery. But when I saw that you had a daughter and that you left her behind, I needed to know why. But why? Why the hell was this necessary? It occurred to me, oh, I get it. If he's such a terrible person that he could abandon his own child, then he could definitely abandon his stepdaughter. That's what you thought, right? She lowered her head, and my answer was clear. That's just great. Okay, I'll spare you the trouble of worrying about it anymore. I'll be gone in the morning. I've already ruined enough lives with my presence. Now you can join the club. You can be friends with my daughter and join the rest of the traitors. Maybe come up with new ways to hurt me. It's a shame you won't have anyone else to push around, at least until I stop somewhere else and someone gives me away. As soon as I start to think I can finally be happy, the vultures gather around me again. I felt I had made my point sufficiently, but all I could do was make her angry. I was already upset with all this nonsense. I loved her with all my heart, but I wasn't going to let her say that and ruin our lives. So you think everyone is just spending their free time trying to ruin your life? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Your daughter gave up everything to come here because she loves you and just wants her father to walk her down the aisle at her wedding and meet his grandchildren. Your ex-wife, who you think is so hateful, just wants to make sure you're okay and find closure for her daughter. You know what, Mark? If you want to live in pain, anger, and bitterness, then it's your choice. I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I'm not going to be with someone who wants to wallow in his own pity. Bad things have happened to you, and I'm sorry this happened. You didn't deserve it. But bad things happen to many people who don't deserve it. Did I deserve my husband to leave me? No. I accepted it and decided to make the best of it, built a life with my daughter, and hoped to build one with you. But it seems like all you can do is run away when things get a little difficult. Yes, I was worried that you would leave me and Sophia because you had done it once before, but when I heard your story, I understood, even if I didn't agree. All of this could have been avoided if you had trusted me enough to talk to me and tell me about yourself. That's what people do when they love each other. They talk, they share everything about themselves, even what they are not proud of. I trusted you not to judge me and, more importantly, to take care of me. But that's what makes good relationships so special. So take your damn key. She threw the key at me as hard as she could, hitting me right in the chest. I was a little upset that I didn't even move. Go and run away so you can find a place where you can just exist like you've been doing for 7 years instead of living with me and Sophia for the last 8 months. If that's what you want, then find it. Leave the woman who adores you and the child who loves you. But I wanted something more, and I wanted it with you. But apparently, this is just another bad thing that happened to me. She turned and walked out of my room without looking back, slamming the door as hard as she could. I felt the whole building shake from the impact, but she didn't care. I wanted her to chase me and beg me to stay because I loved her so much. But I was telling the truth when I said I wasn't going to live with someone who wallowed in anger and bitterness. I watched her walk away and slammed the door behind her. Believe it or not, this was the first time I thought that I might have done something wrong. I had the right to protect myself, to isolate myself from the people who crushed my heart. Didn't I? It never occurred to me that I might have lost something else. I had already admitted to myself that I didn't want to leave. I wanted Rebecca and Sophia, and perhaps now I could have Emily too, at least in part. Oh, I had a lot of apologizing to do. I stopped my packing and went outside. Rebecca's car had already left. I could only hope she went home, but if not, I would have stayed on her doorstep until she got home and begged her for forgiveness. When I pulled into her parking lot, her car was there, so I knew it was time for me to accept whatever she would give me. I just hoped I didn't lose her. I knelt down, which wasn't as easy as before, took a deep breath, and then raised my hand to knock on the door. But before I could knock, the door swung open. Rebecca leaned against the door frame as I picked up the key she had just tossed to me. "What do you want?" she asked. I'm sorry, Rebecca. You were right and I was wrong. I love you, and I love Sophia. I can't lose you. I was stupid, angry, and selfish, and I don't want to be like that anymore. I'll tell you everything. What do you want to know? If you forgive me, I miss you, and I want you. The silence was deafening. She looked at me while I looked at her. Finally, she reached out and took the key from my fingers. Okay, Mark, I'll forgive you, but on one condition. She opened the door completely. You need to make things right with Emily. I stood up and walked through the door, stopping to take her hand and kiss her cheek. She responded by squeezing my hand and kissing me on the lips. Thank God we were okay. Emily was sitting on the sofa. She wasn't crying anymore, but it was obvious that she had been. I knelt down in front of her and took her hands in mine. It had been so long since I had held her hands, and the feeling was both foreign and familiar. Emotions came over me instantly, and my eyes filled with tears before I even said a word. Emily, I began. I'm so sorry for what an idiot I was. I was so angry and hurt about what your mom did that I couldn't see or think straight. After your mom and Brad did what they did, I thought that when you decided to live with them, you also betrayed me. I couldn't stay after that, so I left. I convinced myself that you didn't care because you chose them and not me. But Dad, Emily tried to interrupt, but I stopped her. I know, baby, I know. But that's what I thought. That's how I felt. I was wrong. I understand that now. Thank you. I looked at Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. I finally realized how wrong I was, and maybe someday I will be able to forgive myself. But today, I ask for your forgiveness with a promise to always be there for you from this day forward. Will you forgive me? Of course I forgive you, Dad, Emily said. I was never mad at you. I was just sad about what happened. I know how much it hurt you. I just wish you would have talked to me first. Maybe you'd still leave, maybe you wouldn't, but at least I'd have had a chance to tell you how I feel. But I forgive you, Dad, and I hope you can forgive me for what I chose to do. Live with my mother. Honey, there's no need for forgiveness for that decision, I said. I love you and always have. Yes, that was me at your graduation. We worked so hard to get to that point that I just couldn't miss it. I saw you recognized me. I moved to another place, but I was still there. I saw everything, and I have never been so proud in my life. Emily and I hugged each other, trying to make up for the last 8 years of our lives. We stepped back, and I followed Emily's gaze as she found Rebecca crying quietly in the corner. Emily extended her hand, inviting Rebecca to join us in the hug, and soon we became one big group, united in tears. Finally, I walked away. Hey, baby, where's Sophia? I asked. She's at Mrs. Pritchett's next door now. I guessed it would be emotional. Please bring her. It's important. Rebecca left and returned a minute later with Sophia. Sophia ran into my arms as she always did when we met. I picked her up and carried her to another room for a private conversation. Do you remember? I said, what I promised you about being your new daddy. That I'd be the first to know, she replied. Exactly. Watch this. I returned to the living room. Rebecca sat next to Emily on the couch, and they were just chatting. I stood in front of Rebecca and took her hands, lifting her up. Rebecca, I said, darling, I want to thank you for loving me enough to do for me what I couldn't or didn't want to do myself. You returned my daughter to me even when it was completely my fault that there was such a distance between us. I know you were aware of how I might react, and you did it anyway. You cared more about what was best for me than what was best for you. If that isn't love, then I don't know what is. What you did for me only strengthened my confidence in what I was already sure about. In one motion, I pulled the ring box out of my pocket and got down on one knee. Rebecca, my love, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Rebecca's eyes widened, and she immediately burst into tears. Yes, baby, yes, of course I will marry you. I put the ring on her finger, and then she pulled me to my feet and hugged me. I looked at my daughters, old and new. Looks like you girls are going to be stepsisters. Not stepsisters, Emily corrected me. Just sisters. That night, I took my new family out to dinner, and we discussed wedding details. We planned to go to the courthouse as soon as possible. Neither of us wanted to wait. But I started moving in with Rebecca that night. I left all the furniture behind, so all I had left were clothes and personal items. Rebecca and my future plans were clear and filled with common hopes. I thought I looked pretty good in my tuxedo, but I knew that Rebecca looked stunningly beautiful in her light pink dress. She was 3 months pregnant and had just begun to show. The wedding was wonderful. Emily looked like a princess and Benjamin. He insisted on being called Benjamin, not Ben. Seemed excited to see my daughter and me walk down the aisle. He seemed like a nice guy even though I didn't spend much time with him, but Emily loved him and that was the main thing. I skillfully avoided direct contact with Sarah or Brad throughout the day, although I saw them from afar a couple of times. It had not been possible to avoid them completely over the past few days due to the final preparations for the wedding, including the rehearsal dinner, but we were so busy that there was no time to talk. Sarah and Brad had changed significantly. When Sarah was 36 at the time she left me, she still looked great and weighed about 115 pounds. Seeing her for the first time after about 8 years, I was shocked to see that she now weighed almost 200 pounds. She said life with Brad was so good that she became fat and happy. I suspected, and at the risk of sounding petty and vindictive, I hoped that she was eating away at her guilt for what she had done to me. Rebecca and I were standing together, holding hands and talking with several of Benjamin's relatives, and I didn't see them come up behind me. "Hello, Mark." Her voice, which had once been like an angel singing to me, now made me feel like nails were scraping on a chalkboard. Was her voice always this high? I had forgiven Emily, or rather sought her forgiveness, but my feelings for Sarah had not improved. I realized. Still, for Emily's sake, I tried to remain calm. I turned to face her. "Hi, Sarah." I saw Brad start to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. "Brad, do you remember the last thing I told you?" "Nod if you remember." He nodded. "My feelings haven't changed." He turned to Sarah. "Honey, I'm going to go get a glass of punch. Should I bring you anything?" She shook her head in denial. Rebecca intervened. "I'll join you, Brad. I need something to drink too." It was clearly a deliberate move to leave Sarah and me alone, and I followed them with my eyes until they were out of sight. Once they left, we stood in silence for a moment. I could have gone forever without speaking to her again, but obviously that wasn't on the agenda. She spoke first. "I was hoping that, after this amount of time, things like this wouldn't happen anymore. I guess I was wrong. Is there anything you want, Sarah?" "Yes, Mark. I want us to get over this. I wish we could all be friends. Rebecca is wonderful, and you get along so well together. You're going to be a dad again." "I'm already a dad again," I reminded her. I had met Sophia, whom I had already started adopting at that time, and Sarah was informed about it yesterday. "Yes, of course. What I meant was that although we've had a painful journey, we're all happier than we were before. So I was hoping that we could put the bad feelings behind us and move forward. If not as friends, then at least be friendly." "I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, Sarah. Do you know how much I loved you back then?" She nodded. "So I still hate you and Brad now. It hasn't gotten any easier." "But why, Mark? It's been over 8 years. I understand we could have done better, but why is it still so strong?" "I'll try to explain. First of all, I don't think I ever told you that my mother cheated on my father mercilessly. She even let her lovers come into the house while Dad and I played games or something like that. Dad tried to get her to stop, but she didn't want to, so he put up with it until she left him completely and divorced him to marry one of them. Shortly after that, he committed suicide." "I didn't know that. You told me your father died of a heart attack." "Well, I found the truth a little humiliating, but that's really just background. Sarah, I loved you and was in love with you. You were everything I ever wanted, and not once did you hint that I wasn't that for you. I thought we would grow old together, enjoy our grandchildren, all that. But those dreams were crushed, and you made it clear that I was never the one you really wanted. I fit in as best I could, provided for you so you wouldn't have to work, but obviously you were open to someone you thought was better, even if you weren't actively looking. Do you understand how insufficient I felt? I felt like I wasted my life. I'm sorry about that. It's not that I didn't love you, Mark. I did. I just couldn't help the way I felt. It's true, and if only that was all, maybe I could get over it. I've had exactly 3 people in my life who meant everything to me. I don't work in an office where I make friends among my coworkers. Every day I go to work alone in a truck and fix things for people I don't know and may never see again. I ate lunch alone every day unless I had a job nearby so I could come home and have lunch with you. I came home and spent all my time with the wife I loved, the daughter I adored, and the best friend who knew me best. Then, with one sentence, 2 of the 3 people I loved and trusted destroyed almost everything I knew. They did it together, and they did it on purpose. Mark, we didn't want this to happen, but you didn't stop it. You decided to grab what you wanted and to hell with the consequences. Do you realize how long it took me to even think about trusting a woman again? But even that wasn't enough for you, was it? Was it not enough that I lost my wife and my best friend to each other? No, you should have taken my daughter too. Emily made this choice herself. Nonsense. Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't influence her to stay with you. I raised my voice. Oh, honey, I know it'll be weird having Brad here instead of Dad, but at least you'll still see me when you come home from school. I promise you'll be able to see your dad so often. How can we arrange it? Tell me nothing like this ever happened. She couldn't, and she knew it. I continued, no, you just had to have it all. Your selfish, greedy self just had to have it all with the man you really wanted. Why did your life have to change right then? Of course, you just ruined a man who has loved and supported you for the past 16 years. But who cares about him as long as you get what you want? Have you ever thought about telling your daughter that this will be very difficult for her father? At least I will have this, so I think you should live with your father so we won't be alone, and we'll see each other when we can. I already know the answer. Not once. You're right, Mark. I guess I didn't think about such things. But still, you disappeared without a word. What the hell did you think I was going to do, Sarah? I had no one. My whole family was taken away, and my daughter went along with it. What could I do? Stay home alone 12 days out of every 14, knowing that my life was going on without me right across the street? My wife and my daughter are in my house. Only my wife is now sleeping with my best friend instead of me. Bumping into each other on the street so I can see everything I've lost? Will I stay there and experience this every day for the rest of my life, only to spend a few days a month with a child who rejected me? In my opinion, I had exactly 2 choices. Cut all ties and leave or shoot myself. I hesitated between these options even when I left. When I told Mrs. Patterson that I would see you in hell, it was because I expected to be there soon. I even had a gun. God, Mark, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You were too busy moving on with your life without a care in the world to worry about me. You replaced me with the man you wanted and convinced your daughter to stay with you. You had everything you wanted, and you didn't care about me. I even told you after the hearing that I would leave the house. I didn't mean leaving the area. I meant that I would die. After that, did you express concern or even ask what I meant? But no, I finally realized that I wouldn't give you that pleasure. I didn't kill myself because I realized that I hated you enough to stay alive. Mark, Unfortunately, I continued, ignoring her attempt to speak. I allowed my hatred and anger to cloud my thinking towards Emily. When she decided to live with you, I thought she had chosen you and wanted Brad to become her father instead of me. So I went too far and left without a word. I wish I could put the blame entirely on you for this, but I will take most of the responsibility. Cost me 8 years of her life that I will never get back. Thank God there was finally someone who loved me enough to think about my interests, even perhaps at the expense of her own. But you don't know anything about this, about putting someone else first. Who knows how many more years I would have missed without Rebecca pulling me out of my despair. I'm going to show her for the rest of my life how much I appreciate it. Now do you understand why I continue to hate you? I think I understand, Mark. I was hoping that time would change things, but it didn't. All I can say is that I'm sorry for the way we acted. Maybe in a while, but I won't bother you again. Can we at least agree to be polite? Of course. We still have a daughter together, and although I will try to avoid you, I understand that this will not always be possible. On those occasions when we need to be in the same place, I will be able to treat you at least like a stranger on the street. Just make sure your husband never addresses me again. Over the next 2 years, I gradually bought out my boss's share as he prepared to retire. I became the largest electrical contractor in our area and one of the largest in the region. I was still on call a couple of days a week, but mostly ran the business from an office where my beautiful wife and now 10-year-old daughter took orders. I was in charge of personnel and projects, and together we did the accounting. Sophia was an absolute treasure and adored her new little sister, Katie. As luck would have it, a year after the wedding, Benjamin was offered a promotion in the Cleveland office. It's still about a 4-hour drive from us, but we see them about once a month on the weekends. They seem very happy and are expecting my first grandchild next year. I wish I could say that something terrible happened to Brad and Sarah other than their significant weight gain, but that didn't happen. Although I'm not interested in hearing about them, Emily keeps Rebecca updated on their lives, and Rebecca occasionally mentions things to me. Rebecca doesn't hate them like I do. Why should she? In fact, she's grateful for what they did because it brought us together. She sends them a thank you card every year on our wedding anniversary. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.